wanted to welcome everybody. My name is Sean Koppelman. I'm a 13-year owner in Tower 3 and part of a group that has come together for the common purpose of really promoting the idea and concept of community and gathering and disseminating information. And more so, really for the common purpose of building a sense of community, and with the idea that by doing that, that we can motivate more people like me who have been owners, but non-participants who have really been apathetic for one reason or another, and really more so been uninformed. And whatever information that they have has come through hearsay, innuendo, or sort of information that has been promoted by propaganda, right? So the purpose of today's meeting is really to recap some of the things that have been going on since the last time that this group met, and also to share and disseminate more information. One of the premises of this group getting together was the idea that despite the fact that many of the people in this room come together with major disagreements and major histories with personality conflicts, that you can still come together and share information in a respectful way, and that we're at the end of the day a community, and that we're neighbors. And so that's the way that we intend to run this meeting, and that's the spirit with which we're meeting here today. So we want that everybody that's here to understand that's the understanding that we have here, and that this is going to be an opportunity for everybody that's here today to voice their concerns in some manner or form, and to be able to share what's on their mind, but to do so in a way that's respectful, and that's very important to the group that's meeting here today. As a community, we have a responsibility to be involved, to the best of our ability, and when we're not, we realize that the apathy results in failure. This meeting is to be an interactive discussion, an exchange of ideas that will hopefully result in a collective set of goals or action steps. That was one of the things that people came to us as a group asking last time, well, now what? So hopefully today, that will answer some of those questions. Today, there's going to be some speakers who will address a variety of topics. Erwin Maas will be the first speaker. He'll address some accomplishments of the group and some primary ongoing issues that we see as a group. Sandy Davis will be addressing finances, where we are and where we're going. Hedda Cariou will be addressing the topic of community and ethics, creating community culture, the board majority, ethics, and behavior. And Scott Rosman will be discussing taking action and leading a group discussion, okay, so that everybody that's here who would like to speak and address some things that are on their mind will have an opportunity to do so in a time-sensitive fashion, right, to be respectful of everybody else, okay? So again, I want to thank everybody for taking time out on a Sunday to come out here, and I'll keep moving with introduction to Erwin.
I will indeed speak about our accomplishments as a community, and also the main ongoing issues. I will be reading a lot, so to keep it going, an executive summary, if you will. In the current Galaxy environment, so many people have said to me, what's the use of showing up at a meeting or writing an email to the board? Nothing is going to change anyway. Others have accused us of not really loving the Galaxy because we speak out and hold our board majority responsible for mismanagement and incompetent leadership. But we can affect positive change as a community. We can, and we have. That we can create change together has become apparent over the last few months. Some of our accomplishments. Important information that our board majority and management were withholding from us has been made public. Not only by us, but also by other groups and by individual owners and residents who were simply fed up being lied to, or being told one thing but witnessing and experiencing another. a tactic quite prevalent at the Galaxy, I might say. Because of owners and residents' engagement, concerns and outrage, there was a, albeit narrow, majority vote to extend the opposition against the Appleview development. A vote that, for the first time ever, seemed to be leaning the other way, until owners and residents started to speak up. This, however, is still an ongoing issue that has many owners and residents concerned. Our management and board majority have come under great scrutiny so that their unethical behavior and lack of respect and competence, particularly in interpersonal, communication and financial matters, has been exposed. Two other owners will speak more about this later on. And on Friday, let's call it our own Galaxy V-Day, we received news that our rogue general manager has finally left the building. This is by no means thanks to efforts of our board majority. The FYI group, as well as many other owners and residents, including those that support the board majority, have repeatedly called for Judith Dale-Mara's dismissal. All of us have been outraged by our board majority's decision to keep this woman in charge for so many more months, even after her criminal background became public this summer, and after repeated exposure of lies, unscrupulous behavior, and mismanagement. We therefore still hold this board majority responsible for the unethical conduct and mismanagement during her time here, and the damage she, and by their support and their own conduct, they have caused the Galaxy. Only by our continued pressure and research were we able to turn the tide. We contacted Niagara Falls District Attorney's Office and obtained the court documents regarding Judith Mara's criminal background. We found out she lied on her resume, claiming to have received a degree from a university who, when we contacted them, said she never received a degree there. And we were able to tie her to several of the people she hired to do projects here at the Galaxy without following our 3-bit policy, exposing a potential conflict of interest and complete disregard to the Galaxy bylaws. You would think that a board majority, claiming to do their due diligence, would welcome this kind of support by owners and residents. Instead, we are doing their job for them, while they actively continue to withhold or twist the information about our general manager and finances. Due to owners and residents' many emails to and calls and conversations with other Galaxy residents, board members, and Judith Mara's FSR bosses, whom we spoke to as well, her resignation is now a fact. See, together as a community, we can truly change for the big things for the better here at the Galaxy. And we still have work to do. 10 of our ongoing most pressing issues. 1. Employee morale and turnover. Never before have so many Galaxy employees felt intimidated by their leadership or uncertain about their jobs. Never before have so many employees been fired, quit, or reassigned. Incredibly, some of our majority board members, while running for the board, made this one of their main campaign issues. However, since they have been on the board and by supporting Judith Dale-Mara, employee morale and turnover has never been worse. Please also see the handout we gave in which our board treasurer is quoted from his campaign literature, vouching to do exactly the opposite to what is happening. 2. Appleview litigation assessment, dirty politics. Through conversations with some of the board members, we know that several members on the board majority have actively tried to get other board members to vote with them in order to stop our litigation so that Appleview can be built. One board member has publicly stated that residents' concern and outrage about potentially stopping our defense decided this person's vital vote to continue the litigation. We also know that because of that, other board majority members simply voted along or abstained as they knew they did not have the majority vote to stop the litigation. This way, they tried to falsely appease owners' concerns by saying they voted for it while hiding their real agenda on the matter. The Appleview litigation assessment that our board majority is planning to implement in our next maintenance bill shows their true intentions and also a dirty political move. Expenses far greater than those for the Appleview litigation are not separately stated. By highlighting this particular expense, especially in the December holiday month, they clearly are trying to influence popular sentiment so as to push through their own agenda and narrow view on the matter. 3. Tower 2 garage elevator. No need to say a lot here. I don't live in this tower, but I even feel their frustration. 4. Living in a police state. Threatening owners and residents with security guards as well as scaring them by using the word litigation over and over and over is still a favorite go-to response by management and board majority, instead of reaching out to have an adult communication and give people the information they're asking for. 5. The so-called spa sabotage is still a mystery. The board might think that they've appeased residents' questions by having two pool company owners speak rather vaguely and seemingly pressured at an open board meeting. When speaking with them in the spa hallway afterwards, they, much more relaxed, actually verified the information our FYI group had said about this matter. Our spa manager at the time did not have a CPO certification to operate the levels of the pumps that disperse the chemicals into the pool, and these levels were way off. Our general manager and several members of our board majority told us months ago we would receive information about the big police investigation into this matter. Again, nothing. 6. Our mayor's alleged election fraud and his role of election committee chair. That some of our board majority supporters do not see the major red flags or hear the alarm bells go off in this case is frankly beyond me personally. This whole issue screams conflict of interest. After repeated exposure of unethical conduct and calls for action, our mayor's daughter and son-in-law, respectively our board's secretary and treasurer, refused to recuse themselves from votes pertaining their family member. They obstruct an investigation into the alleged election fraud, and though knowing that many people at the Galaxy object to their conduct and feel this reeks conflict of interest, they give a big middle finger to our community and happily vote for their father and father-in-law to become our election committee chair again. One family's agenda seems to be at stake here, and it seems to overrule everything else, including whatever is best for the Galaxy community. 7. Completely financial mismanagement and incompetence and a disregard by both management and board majority for our Galaxy bylaws in matters such as bidding process, transfer of funds, and outsourcing our accounting department. The next speaker will speak in more depth about financial matters. 8. Dysfunctional boards and disrespectful board members. Board members are expected to represent us. Board members are expected to set the example. Board members are expected to have the Galaxy's best long-term interests at heart. Sadly, with our current board, one only needs to go to one board meeting to lose faith in all of the above expectations. We see a board president that cannot lead a healthy conversation among board members, let alone take control of the entire room. He also seems to set different rules for different board members. We have board members screaming at other members, as well as at owners and residents. At our last meeting here, one of them even threatened in a complete rage to sue all owners and residents in the room. And a personal low for me was at September's open board meeting when Joe Purcell, our board treasurer, was wearing a t-shirt with a printed text on it, dissing another board member and many of his supporters congratulating him for it. Come on, are we living in a college dorm? And we are asked to respect this man and trust him with overlooking our finances. 9. Us versus them mentality. In the past months, I've spoken to members of our board majority and several of their supporters. I have no problem speaking with people whom I might not share views with. I welcome speaking with them directly about issues instead of two-faced chatter or talking behind people's back. It usually takes me a half hour, though, to explain to them that I really do not know these people of past boards that they keep talking about, and that they seem to be convinced of that I'm trying to get back into position. I am my own man, and I can think for myself, thank you. I am not advocating for any one board, past or present. I'm advocating for transparency, use of common sense, and showing a little honesty and respect. I might be going way out on a limb here, but I am the youngest person speaking to you today, and I keep on being confronted with an old way of thinking. When I talk with other younger owners and residents that perhaps have not lived here as long as some of you, none of them is interested in old politics. They look at what is happening now under our current board and management, and most of them, frankly, are just completely baffled or disgusted. Some of them even say they would have never bought or rented at the Galaxy if they had known about this ridiculous old us versus them mentality. 10. Trust. When I spoke at the open board meeting in August, this topic was at the core of my address to the board. Sadly, I don't think many members of the board majority received the message, as they were simply trying to find some technical errors to point out so that they did not have to deal with the main issue I was talking about. the fact that many people in our community have completely lost trust in our management leadership and our board majority. I know some people have said, don't spread so much negativity and let's keep everything nice. They sum up how the Galaxy is in such a great location and has such nice facilities and nice flowers in the driveway. Unfortunately, these things are rather superficial when people feel intimidated, unsafe, and have lost faith in their board majority that is supposed to represent their interests. The loss of trust is one of the main current issues we must address as a community. Next up, to talk about the Galaxy finances, our declining property value and increasing maintenance costs. Where are we and where are we going? Here is Sandy Davis.
I was asked to speak to cover some of the financial aspects. We're going to run through it fairly fast, but this area ties in with the same themes that Erwin expressed. Overall, if I had to look at the Galaxy coming off of Boulevard East and think about the question that Erwin raised about declining property values, where we are and where we're going, the first thing that anybody notices is just the beat-up condition of the exterior, the roadway in particular. That's something that should have been on this board's radar to take care of a long time ago. And as a member of the FAC, I funded the 2013 budget with the startup phase work. This board took that off the 2014 budget and has paid no attention to it, and it wouldn't surprise me it won't be on the 2015. So when you drive into the Galaxy, where are you heading? When you start on that bumpy road down to the first building that you're going to go into, it's a bad start. Secondly, you get into the buildings and then you have the same old condition of the carpets. As a member of the FAC who orchestrated the loan repayment, our plan and baked into the 2013 budget was to hit the ground running in the first quarter and start on the lower floors below 16 with the carpet. I did that budget with a very able member that served the Galaxy, Jude Odenthal. Jude was the most knowledgeable internal person here with respect to projects and the spa. And for 2 to 3 years, he worked with me in setting budgets that worked from 2010 to 2013. Again, that's an aspect that this board fell flat on and is essentially about 2 years behind on. So again, what does somebody see walking in with a broker? Why does this road look this way? Oh, well, we've repaired it a few times in the last 10 years. And the board probably has spent, $500,000, $1 million, whatever the figure is. It's been a large series of expenditures. So then they get to the lobby and they say, oh, the lobbies look nice. What's going on with the hallways? Well, we're not really sure. So we don't even have a program in place that's been announced. Even if internally the board has a plan, we don't really know of it. Now I know 2 years ago the board had a plan regarding the carpets because they were looking at designs. Okay, but all that was scuttled, and as I said, there was nothing done in the interim. Other themes, politically driven policy. We are making financial decisions not based on objective criteria and sometimes making the hard calls like the FAC made in the period when we came out of insolvency. We're doing what feels good and looks good to owners. Okay, and I'm going to give you some examples of that as I go into my piece here. But I'm also going to say that it has driven their policy on Appleview. It drove their policy on putting handcuffs on me as the member of the FAC when there were no replacement members, simply because they either didn't like the policy that helped us right the ship during that period to come out of insolvency, which was tough on the owners, but it actually created the firm financial platform that we have today, potentially with $3 to $5 million of funding into our R&R fund to do projects. Thank you. And as part of that, with the board putting handcuffs on me, which I'll give you an interesting email, where I was told to speak to nobody, but I was not discharged. I was just refrained from behavior, okay? The FAC asked for meetings with the board in August, September, October 2013 to address the board on Appleview and the bankruptcy with the mall. And I was ignored on both cases. So it was a complete shutdown, and I had more knowledge of those matters than the entire board put together. What have we been seeing? Joey Purcell talks about his accounting background, he's doing good things and knocking what the prior FAC did. But what I see is him following blindly a GM that's a great saleswoman and hopefully should be doing her sales pitch in prison, but she's been doing her sales pitch and she has led this board blindly down multiple paths, multiple projects that all have a financial component. And there's been no proper analysis. As a result, both intertwined with that and sometimes independently, we are wasting money once again. Now, during the period when I was at the FAC, particularly 2012, the only year that we ran a material loss, which was relatively mild compared to the prior 10 years, that was a $300,000 loss in 2012, driven by $700,000 of legal expense overrun. Apart from that, our budget worked beautifully. We had a $20,000 loss in 2010, a $30,000 loss in 2013, okay? And basically, that was the proof we were not wasting money. We executed an elevator project that we budgeted at $2.9 million. Basically, we're under budget today by somewhere $50,000 to $100,000. It was executed with proper bidding. We'll get into all that. Bottom line is, we did the tough things and we did them properly. What do we see this board doing? One example is the Tower 1 wall. That project is $125,000 over the proper price out of the gates. So, you know, you can do something fancy on one hand, and then down the other hand, suddenly you're costing owners more. I won't get into where the money is being absorbed. Should it be this fund, that fund, or whatever, but I'm telling you that there's no cost control of the material matter going on. The next thing, where are we going? We paid down the loan. We knocked off $1 million of interest expense a year over the course of the last loan facility that we had. And that would have continued most likely had we continued on a path of doing projects ahead of loan repayment or of mixing the two, because you never have the funding to pay back $16 million of loan principal in 3 years like we did. And you'd end up always finding a new project that we must do. So it's like the person with the $100,000 credit card balance who's managing the interest but keeps saying, I gotta have those boots, I gotta have that house, I gotta have that car. So we had to exercise that discipline, and we did. We wouldn't have if we continued on with some mixture of projects of a material kind. So when we speak of the $2.4 million of interest savings that we did get, it really, in fact, most likely would have been ongoing, that interest cost. So the savings is much higher. Now, so we set up the R&R fund for a beautiful takeoff in 2013. Up to that point, for 3 years, we were funding nearly $5 million of a $16+ million assessment to the owners to run this place, roughly a third just to pay off the loan. The moment that was paid off, we had room to bring down maintenance by about $2 million and fund, at that point, the R&R fund contribution was $6.8 million. The excess over the 5 was funding that we created for the first time, legitimate non-debt finance funding of the R&R fund. So we had $6.7 million to play with. In the 2013 budget, we created the reduction in maintenance. Not this board. This board claims they did it, We created it. And if you can manage the operating fund on its own, you've got a lot of money to both get in the R&R fund to return to the homeowners, as we did, and then fund projects. Okay, let's talk about the theme of the projects. This board put in $3.5 million, reducing the contribution from 2013 to 2014. So they brought it down by about $1 million. To date, they have barely spent 15% of the dedicated funding. That takes you back to driving into the driveway. And what are you seeing? What are they doing? It's 2 years. What are they doing? Why do they move so slowly? Where is their concern? $400,000 is, according to their 9-month financials, as to where they are on their projects. This is just plainly pitiful. Okay. So basically, what did we do in the prior years? We managed bad debt. That was criticized. Had we not managed bad debt and built it into the budget with reserves, we never would have survived. This board has actually overmanaged bad debt. We did an analysis that the necessary pay-in was about a 3.5% gross up to total maintenance to cover our homeowner brethren who are not paying in. This board has done their bad debt in the 5 to 6% range. That has put too much money into the operating fund. We are presently showing a surplus according to their budget, 9 months, and that's heading towards 80 to 100,000. It doesn't actually reflect the surplus in the R&R fund because I think they do their variance computation only in the operating fund. So I maintain there's a 1.5 difference between us and that Chet Sincor never knew what he was doing, but I was cut off from interacting. I clearly would have given them the precedent that we had established and that was more or less working. Now Joey will come back and say, well, we had this huge bad debt with the mall. The mall was not part of that 3.5%. The mall was a different analysis. It was based on the fair value of the property, driven by the broker, and that determination was generally made with the accounting firm. Nonetheless, to be conservative, in the early years, we still reserved $240,000 to be conservative, okay? Now, quickly, just to go through a few things. I mentioned the general manager controlling our financial policy. Repair of Tower 1 wall. The initial bid was $130,000. The board turned it down in open session when there was no emergency. Then we had some big rains, then there was a problem. Then Judith brought in her contractor, and they did a deal for $250,000. Then there were problems without getting a permit. And what was supposed to be an emergency job turned out to be a 2 to 3 month job. In any event, I spoke to Jude, and Jude was there at the time when the initial bids came in, and he said that's ridiculous. So again, Judy selected her people to our dismay, costing us a good 6 figures. Energy contracts. One of the major cost containers during the period that I was involved was good energy. We went to fixed energy contracts. We got a good consultant in Eric Miller at Dome Tech, and he was bypassed by Judy. She brought in her guy, signed some deal during the pool over-chlorination period, probably announced something publicly that I remember, like, boy, we did this, we did that. In fact, they probably picked a price that's too high. I know energy prices went up and down radically in July. What I can tell you is Eric did a great job for us timing the market, and he was not consulted. You will see energy going up significantly in the next year budget. Energy, sale of the antenna rights. We have a 99-year lease of an antenna at the top of one of the buildings that we were getting $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 for. It was varying. Well, this board sold it off for 10 years worth of payments roughly. No consultant, no analysis. It's probably far from the true present value, but the real value is the value of owning something that could have a different use that they never discussed. A different technology may come about, we may want the flexibility to do something else rather than be tied up with another party. In any event, once again, there was no proper procedure, professional procedure, to analyze what's going on here and what's the right value. It was just a rush to push it through. So now the board is probably excited because they're going to be cash rich with a $550,000 cash infusion that's going to help us fund the future without raising costs. We've been through this before where we've sold apartments that help fund projects. Bottom line is, if you can justify the sale of an asset, that's one thing, and you do it properly, okay? But we shouldn't be balancing budgets and keeping our costs down as we jettison our very infrastructure, okay?
If people want to hear more about finances, we're going to talk about at the end about possibly doing a separate meeting where we can, this is not enough time actually to get into all the finances, but hopefully we'll have
Just
more.
take through
So
a
you
few
just
things.
wrap up right now and then we're going to keep
Okay.
going.
There were a whole bunch of strategies that she implemented for with Hurricane Sandy. Again, she was leading the pack. Outsourcing of accounting, that was a very strange incident. We've outsourced, our cost has gone up. Typically, if you do a good job outsourcing, your cost goes down. So right there, we have a $50,000 increase. There really was no true competitive bidding once again. I mentioned the bad debt. This board thought it was wise to eliminate the energy pass-through. It was too complicated, it didn't make sense. Now that the ship is settled, we don't need it. The reality is, as of September, we're negative on energy by 290,000. I don't know where the year's gonna end up, but it was always a very important thing because when the FAC was handling the ship, or handed the ship in 2008, we owed Hess 900,000 and our lights were about to be shut off. So that was a practice that should have been kept around. Disregard for governance. The movement of $3 million plus of our R&R funds that accumulated by, was done without proper board approval. It was done under the guise of getting higher interest. We're getting a few more basis points at the risk of taking one extra FDIC bank protection out of the equation and putting it with a bank with a lesser quality rating. I had said that we have political-driven policy. The only thing that Joe Purcell and the board contacted me about before there was a replacement FAC was my view on Appleview. And they were cornering me into a confession that I was responsible or involved in the strategy to purchase the property. I was partly responsible, yes. I was trying to come up with any way, which I still think is on the table and feasible, any way to protect the galaxy in a cost-efficient manner that would create safety, okay? And those were the only questions. The only questions asked of me, and I sent an email back explaining the rationale, and I explained the choices that the board has to try to rationalize cost the way they're doing, and say there's a cost versus human life that is just, the cost isn't acceptable, or to do what is strategically viable by putting on the table multiple competing strategies that'll eventually come into play. And I asked to meet with the board, and I did not. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Heather Carey. I'm really glad to see you here today. I want to open with two questions that are fundamental to the way each of us view our plight and our power as owners or residents of the galaxy. I want each of you to ask yourself, do you live in a condominium or do you live in a community? Are those terms mutually exclusive or are they inseparable from one another? How each of you answers that question has much to say about your intent and your will to benignly accept, actively support, or change and improve the standards by which we have been living in the galaxy. And by standards, I don't mean just aesthetics, although we're badly in need of improved aesthetics. I want those hallways done in the worst way. But I'm talking about the standard by which we interact with each other as neighbors and how we treat our staff. And I am particularly talking about the ethical standard by which we operate administratively. Because make no mistake, our property values and fiscal well-being has everything to do with the standards we are willing to accept, support, or create. Right now, we appear to accept or support a standard of community ethics that gives a board president and treasurer license to take matters into their own hands and, for example, break community association bylaws by moving millions of dollars of our money between banks without board approval. When two board members act without full board approval, they act unilaterally without your approval. Because it's the board as a whole that we elect to represent our interests. This is neither good representation or good stewardship. It approaches a kind of tyranny. Really it does. And when owners plead to these people for explanations or elucidation and you're stonewalled, that invalidates you. It invalidates all of us. It's like we don't exist. That's political. And with the money we pay for our maintenance, that's unacceptable. To me, anyway. Maybe it might be acceptable to you. That's fine. When owners, but here's the thing. When owners accept this kind of behavior without protest, it sets a standard by which the board president, treasurer, and majority believe they may continue to act. We send them the message that they in fact do have our tacit approval to make such decisions unilaterally, perhaps unethically, or even illegally, without fear of being held accountable. There are those of us who have chosen to make our homes here. Our intent is to start families or raise children here, or live a single life rich with neighbors who are friends, or perhaps to grow old in a safe and pleasant environment. We are invested in every sense of the word, financially, physically, and emotionally in our surroundings. Our will, therefore, is to support decisions that not only raise property values, but also create comfort, peace of mind, and dare I say, help us find joy in our living environment. Yet we have elected board directors whose publicly stated intent is to sell their apartments as quickly as possible for as high a price as possible, and their will in implying that intent is to make decisions in the interest of the short term and the few, rather than serving the interests of the long term and the many. Our board is elected to represent our values and to make decisions that reflect those values. So now ask yourself, please, what are your values? And do you see them being represented? For months now, owners have been asking questions in an attempt to promote a dialogue about those values in the face of a board majority that appears interested only in domination. We have a board majority that has made much of their high regard for democracy, yet who refuse to investigate the alleged thwarting of the democratic process in the last board election. Rather, they have created an internal power structure that excludes not just owners, but other board members. So we have a little mini board in the majority who's running the rest of the board. In particular, our board president and treasurer, Carl Kininger and Joe Purcell, have shown complete disrespect and disregard for our governing documents for both the association members and employees of the Galaxy. On the table as you go out, there's somebody said, come up with some questions for the board. Do you know, and I tried to keep it short, honestly I did. 3 pages, 25 questions, every one of them important. Take them with you. So, a friend of mine who is an owner here, I said, so you're coming to the meeting this morning? She says, well, I have stuff to do. I think that translates to, I'll do something about what I can in my own life because I don't feel like I can do something here. But where you live and what happens here, this is your life. This is my life. I want to feel safe here. I want to feel happy walking out. I haven't, my husband started a new job 5 years ago and I have yet to invite any of his coworkers to dinner because I don't want them coming through my hall. Well, what a way to live, you know? And now I turn around, I find out that we've had the money to do those halls for 2 years and it's just sitting there, honestly. So, this comes to why. There's 25 why questions on those pages. So here's a why. Why should we allow this to continue? And what can we do? FYI Galaxy does not pretend to have the answers. We have ideas, we have thoughts, but we don't have answers. We encourage you to come up with some answers. What can you do? One thing we can all do is start friggin' coming to board meetings. Show up. Write them letters. Call them. Run for the board. Okay, 2 minutes. So I'm not going to go over all that. Board ethics and behavior. I just want to mention 2 things. Do I have? Wait a sec. Hang on. I know I went to the table. Here it is. All right. Thanks. Okay. I want to mention one thing that's really, really important to me because I do have a bit of a reputation for losing my temper, and I'm going to own that because why I lose my temper, like at board meetings, I lose my temper for 2 reasons. One, when I sit there and I know particular board members are lying to other board members. That makes me angry. But what really makes me angry is when I sit there and I watch, and I'm going to name names, Joe Purcell and Barbara Drashev and Sohila Kobler mock and laugh and roll their eyes and sigh and do everything they can to discredit other board members. And they do it to owners. And that is not how I want to be represented. Those people do not represent me. I want people there who represent, those are not my values. So if they're your values, keep them on. And if they're not, I think, this is just personal, this is not FYI Galaxy, it's just me. I think, the question I'm putting to you now then is, do we want to allow those people to persist for the the duration of their elected time? Because then we have to sit here and watch that for another year or 2. I'm not willing to do that. Okay. I'll just quickly to close, I'm going to, this is on the back page too, I'm just going to list for you the aspects and values of a healthy, genuine community, which I researched. Inclusivity, diversity, commitment, communication, consensus building. Wouldn't it be nice to have a board president who did that? It's integrative. This kind of community reaches to extend itself. It values diversity. It understands that realistic decision-making requires humility. It's willing to contemplate and recognize its own ill health and take steps to heal itself. It fights, but it fights gracefully. It learns to listen, rejects cliques and factions, doesn't make dissent personal or take it personally. It encourages and invites fresh ideas and perspectives. Members of a community, a healthy community, they create safety for each other. They participate, they practice reconciliation, and they do not give in to a perceived sense of helplessness. I will end with a quote. Placing value only on the cost of things is life lived cheaply in the most profound way.
Rosman, we're going to change things up a little bit here in the second half. What we're going to do the second part of this meeting is we're going to have an interactive discussion about what we want, and then we're going to talk about action, how we can make it happen. It's going to be two parts. In a bit, I'm going to ask everyone, there's some pads on the table, to write down a few things that they want for the Galaxy. Truly what you want to have happen and change here, like a wish list type thing. That's going to be the first part. After that, we're going to have an interactive discussion about how we're going to make that happen. That I'm going to be leading. We're going to be talking about what we can do and what we're willing to do. During that part, I'm going to ask people to remain respectful. I'm going to really reiterate that we need to stay on point. I might interrupt people, and it might piss people off. I'm apologizing that in advance, but it's really about focusing on not our personal stories, but about action, what we want to have happen, and how to make it happen. It's not about the past, it's about how we're going to move forward. But before that, I wanted to challenge each of you to consider, what are you really willing to do to improve things here? If the answer is nothing, then frankly, we deserve what we get. How can we expect anything to change if we're not willing to do something to make it happen? We can't. It's really that simple. It's not about our words, but it's about action. And if we take action as a community and as individuals, we can make a difference, which we've seen happen over the last few months. People have been criticizing those of us who are taking action and speaking up, and instead put their heads in the sand saying this place is great the way it is, but they're totally missing the point and the goals of our group. One of our goals from the beginning was to know the facts. I got involved when I found out Jude was fired. I reached out to him. I heard his story, something no one on the board did, even though they fired him and he worked here for 10 years. I found that outrageous, not even to get to talk to somebody. I was shocked by the methods that were employed, which seemed like a witch hunt, and I questioned that, the process. Not about the actions, but the process that happened. As I and others asked questions, we found out more disturbing things. We found out about the criminal history of the GM. We found out about safety delinquencies and incompetency. We saw employees being fired or quitting left and right. We found out owners were being lied to nonstop. We tried talking to the board, first presenting a petition, hundreds of us, then speaking at board meetings, even meeting face to face. To date, we have gotten no answers, showing no respect for owners. We want a community that is decent, fair, has board members and management with even basic skills to lead. We realize we don't currently have that. Like most, we could sit quiet and say or do nothing. But instead, we felt owners had a right to know, and also that we deserve better. Our goal is to has been and always will be to have a better community, one grounded in fairness, respect, justice, common sense, decent leadership, financial diligence, a building that looks like a luxury building, and one where our property values are as high or higher than other buildings here on the Gulf Coast. The group of people who have been writing letters, meeting with and talking to owners, working tirelessly to get information and share it with owners, love the Galaxy more than anybody I know. They've invested their time, their energy, and even their own money to improve it. Again, I ask, what are you willing to do to improve things around here? Yes, we also appreciate the views and the amenities, but that doesn't mean we're content with sitting quiet when we see common sense being ignored, when we see employees being fired or quitting, or we see blatant examples of injustice or questionable behavior and mismanagement. That is what made us stand up and speak out. What would it take for you to do the same? The two things, loving the Galaxy and trying to improve it, are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they are very, very related. You can love the Galaxy and appreciate it like we do, and also take action to make it better. We hope that you care enough to do that. Many people we've talked to have said it's hopeless, it's so negative, that they don't want to get involved, and they use that as an excuse not to get involved. Others have said you can't change anything, but that's not true. We have, and we can. Doing nothing actually is doing something. It's allowing injustice and mismanagement to continue. Being quiet creates the situation we have now. You may not want to admit that, but if we look throughout history, it's clearly true. If we truly want this place to be what it can be, we need to speak up as a community and change the culture here. It's not about, oh, she's a nice person, or I'm friends with him, but about choices and actions and issues that are affecting our lives and our finances. We really need things to change. We need new processes. What we're doing is not working. We all see that, even those not really wanting to look. The communication is awful, the building is a mess, management is horrific, the board is unresponsive and even hostile to owners and to each other. Our property values are not even close to what they should be for our location. Our maintenance is too high for what we're getting. Look around. So the question that I'm really going to talk about now, and we're all going to talk about together, is what do we do about it? Do we sit quiet, or do we stand up and speak out? Do we do something that's proactive to make a positive difference, or do we just pass the buck to others? Again, what are you willing to do? As you think about that question, I'm going to challenge each of you to take a pad that's in front of you or any piece of paper and just jot down a few things that you want to change here. Basically answering the question, what do you want for the galaxy, for your home? Think of it as a wish list. It's not about if it can happen or how it can happen, but really, what do you want? Do we want the same things? Maybe we don't. That's why we have conflict. I have a feeling that a lot of us do want the same thing, but we need to first understand what that is, and then we can talk about how we can make that happen. So we're going to take 2 minutes to do that. If everybody could just jot down on a piece of paper some of the things that they want. Then we're going to read them out loud, and then we're going to have a dialogue about how we can take action. So some of the things that I want, for example, as you're starting to write stuff down, is I want a culture that is no longer about us versus them, which seems to be the prevailing and acceptable way around here. I also want a better system and process in place regarding the communication between owners and the board, so owners' voices can be heard and they are treated with respect. When you're jotting down some of the things that you want, you can be something like this, but it also can be something more practical, like finally getting the Tower 2 garage elevators fixed. So please just take 2 minutes now. We're going to just write stuff down. Then I'm going to go around and we're quickly going to read some of those things. And then the next part is going to be really an active discussion about what we can do to make those things happen. But before we can figure out what that is, we need to know what those things are. So everyone, 2 minutes, just please jot down. No right or wrong, just whatever you're feeling.